There is a strange and silent shift happening in the human experience, a kind of tremor beneath consciousness itself, something so subtle that most people never notice it until it begins to shake the foundations of their lives. Perhaps you felt it too, this quiet pressure in your chest, a sensation like a whisper from some ancient part of yourself trying desperately to surface. It doesn't speak in language, it speaks in tension and restlessness, and that uneasy feeling at 3 a.m. when the world is silent, but your mind is wide awake. People look at this feeling and give it names: anxiety, stress, depression, labels that allow society to package discomfort neatly and pretend to understand it. But the truth is far stranger, far more mystical than those tidy words allow. What if nothing is wrong with you? What if nothing has ever been wrong with you? What if this discomfort is not a malfunction of your biology, but the first signal of an awakening that modern civilization has no vocabulary for? Because the world we've built is astonishingly good at manufacturing distraction, but remarkably poor at honoring the inner dimension of human consciousness. We live inside an artificial dream made of schedules and deadlines, fluorescent lights and digital noise, a world where the rhythm of nature has been replaced by the rhythm of machines. And buried beneath this mechanical hum is the soft, trembling voice of your true self calling out to you. Most people don't hear it. Some hear it and suppress it, but you, if you are still listening, you've already stepped outside the trance. You've already begun to feel the edges of the illusion pressing in. You might think this makes you weak, unstable, overly sensitive. But what if it means the opposite? What if sensitivity is not a flaw, but the earliest sign that the inner eye is opening? Consider for a moment how absurd our definitions of success have become. We chase numbers in a bank account as if they were sacred scriptures. We climb ladders that lead to nowhere except deeper into exhaustion. We mistake productivity for purpose. We take the infinite mystery of our existence and reduce it to a checklist. And then we wonder why the soul rebels. Your anxiety is not the rebellion of a broken system. It is the rebellion of a healthy spirit trapped in an unnatural world. It is the alarm bell ringing inside you, telling you that something is profoundly out of alignment. Imagine a bird who has forgotten how to fly because the cage it was born into convinced it that flight was impossible. That bird would feel uneasy too, not because it is sick, but because it is remembering. Your discomfort is the memory of freedom. It is the intuition that you were not meant to live life as a cog in someone else's machine. You were not meant to suppress your intuition, your creativity, your curiosity. And every time you step further away from your authentic nature, some part of you cries out. Most people drown that cry in noise. Work, entertainment, substances, endless scrolling through glowing screens. They numb themselves just enough to continue functioning inside a system that was never designed for their well-being. But you haven't fully numbed yourself. You can still feel the pinch of the shoes that are too small. You are still awake enough to sense the madness in normality, and that is why you feel what you feel. You are the canary in the coal mine of modern existence, reacting not because you are broken, but because you are still alive in a world that demands numbness. The strange thing about human consciousness is that it was never meant to be compressed into a tight little box of expectations. Consciousness is vast, it is immeasurable, it is cosmic in its origin. When you feel this restlessness, you are not feeling a personal malfunction. You are feeling the pressure of a cosmic force pushing against the boundaries of a life too small for your spirit. You are sensing the difference between the life you have been taught to fit into and the life you were meant to expand into. This discomfort does not come to destroy you. It comes to push you toward remembering. It comes as a messenger from some deeper, older part of your being. But in our culture, we are trained to kill the messenger. We treat our inner signals as problems to be solved rather than wisdom to be honored. You are told to adjust your attitude, to be more positive, to stay busy, to keep grinding, keep producing. keep moving in a straight line even if that line is leading you deeper into emptiness. But anxiety is not cured by moving faster in the wrong direction. There is another kind of discomfort, one that few people recognize. It is the discomfort of expanding beyond your old identity. It feels like fear, but it is actually the trembling before transformation. It is the moment when the old version of you begins to dissolve, not because you are failing, but because you are outgrowing the small story you've been living in. You are not collapsing. You are molting. Human beings were not designed for the rigid structures we now worship. Ancient cultures understood something we have forgotten, that sensitivity is a doorway, not a defect. People who felt the world more deeply, who sensed energies others overlooked, were not medicated. They were initiated. They were guided into the mysteries. They became shamans, dreamers, visionaries, the bridges between the visible and invisible worlds. Their inner storms were understood as signs of a calling, but our world fears what it cannot measure. It dismisses the sacred because it cannot put it in a spreadsheet. So it tells you that your sensitivity is weakness, that your restlessness is dysfunction, that your longing for something deeper is unrealistic. But the truth is that the world is starving for exactly the qualities you have been taught to hide. When you feel anxious, you are feeling the clash between two realities, the artificial world that has been constructed around you and the ancient, wild, magnificent world that still lives inside you. The friction between these worlds creates turbulence, and that turbulence is not a mistake. It is the force of life trying to break through concrete. It is the river pushing against the dam. It is the birth of a new self. Most people spend their lives trying to strengthen the dam. You are beginning to listen to the river. There is something profound hidden beneath the noise of your fear. Something like a compass, something like a memory, something like an invitation. The invitation is not to run from your discomfort, but to enter it, to explore it. Ask it what it wants from you. Because discomfort that arises from awakening does not want to destroy you. It wants to guide you. And every time you ignore it, the whisper grows louder. Every time you suppress it, the pressure increases. Because your soul will not allow you to live a life that betrays your nature forever. At some point, the calling becomes undeniable. You're not here to fit in. You're here to wake up. And this awakening doesn't arrive as a thunderbolt from the heavens. It begins quietly, almost imperceptibly, as a subtle shift in how you perceive the world. Suddenly, the routines you once accepted without question feel strangely hollow. The conversations that used to entertain you feel repetitive, weightless, disconnected from anything real. The goals you were striving for begin to look like mirages, shimmering promises that lose their meaning the moment you get close. You start to sense that there is something missing, something essential, though you cannot yet name it. And this nameless longing becomes the new pulse of your life. Many people panic when they reach this point. They feel themselves drifting away from the familiar identity they've worn for years, and they cling desperately to it even as it crumbles in their hands. But you, if you listen carefully, will realize that you are not drifting away from yourself. You are drifting back to yourself, back to the self that existed before the world told you who to be, back to the self that hears the quiet music underneath all things. There is a secret truth at the center of human experience. The world you have been taught to obey is only a tiny fragment of reality. Beneath the surface of daily life, there is an entire dimension of existence bursting with meaning, beauty, and intelligence. You can feel it in those rare moments when your mind becomes silent, when you look at the sky at night and the stars seem impossibly bright, or when you stand near the ocean and something ancient stirs inside you, reminding you of the immensity of your origins. These moments are not random. They are cracks in the facade of modern life. Through them, your consciousness glimpses a world it has always belonged to, but temporarily forgotten. This is why your anxiety feels so different from ordinary fear. It is not the anxiety of running from something external. It is the anxiety of being called towards something deeper. It is the trembling of a door inside you beginning to open. And yes, stepping through that door requires letting go of the identity you've been taught to wear. It requires shedding the expectations that have shaped your decisions for years. But the shedding is not a loss. It is a liberation. Like a snake releasing its old skin, you are releasing the psychological armor that once protected you but now restricts your growth. You may find that the things you once pursued with urgency no longer interest you. The thrill of competing with others fades. The desire to prove yourself weakens. The pressure to meet every expectation dissolves. You begin to sense that the race you were running was meaningless, that the approval you were seeking has no real substance, that the version of yourself you were trying to maintain was built on fear rather than truth. And as this realization settles in, a new clarity begins to dawn. You start to understand that life isn't asking you to run faster. It's asking you to wake up. As this awakening deepens, you become aware of the immense energy you've spent pretending to be more confident than you feel, pretending to be more certain than you are, pretending to be satisfied when something inside you was quietly collapsing, pretending to agree with a world that feels increasingly foreign. And the moment you stop pretending, even for a second, you feel an astonishing release, like taking off a mask you didn't know you were wearing. You feel oxygen return to the parts of you that have been suffocating. You may also begin to notice that your senses become sharper. Colors seem more vivid. Sounds carry a depth you never realized. Your intuition strengthens. Your ability to sense the emotional truth behind things becomes almost uncanny. This is because awakening reactivates parts of your consciousness that have been dormant. The world trains you to see only the surface of things. But awakening restores your ability to perceive their essence. You begin to sense the emotional architecture of people's words, the invisible weight behind their silence, the subtle contradictions in their behavior. You see more because you feel more. And naturally, this sensitivity can feel overwhelming at times. When you awaken in a world that is still asleep, you may experience a strange sense of detachment, as if you are witnessing a play that no longer captivates you. People around you continue to repeat the same complaints, the same fears, the same arguments, trapped in cycles they don't even recognize. You watch them cling to illusions you once believed in, and part of you longs to pull them out, to shake them awake. But another part of you knows that awakening cannot be forced. Consciousness blooms at its own pace, like a flower that cannot be rushed. During this stage, you might feel moments of deep loneliness, not because you are truly alone, but because you are no longer able to fully participate in the illusions that used to bind you to others. The conversations that once felt normal now feel painfully shallow. The ambitions that once excited you now feel strangely artificial. And the people you once depended on to define your identity can no longer tell you who you are. This loneliness is not a void, it is a threshold. It is the empty space that appears when the old self dies and the new self has not yet been born. It is the silence before the transformation. If you can endure this silence without running back to old identities for comfort, something extraordinary begins to happen. You start to feel drawn toward experiences that nourish you rather than distract you. Nature becomes more meaningful than entertainment. Stillness becomes more fulfilling than constant activity. Solitude becomes a sanctuary rather than a prison. You begin to rediscover the small miracles of life, the warmth of sunlight on your skin, the pattern of wind through the trees, the quiet rhythm of your breathing. These simple moments carry a wisdom that no book or teacher can provide. They reconnect you to the pulse of existence itself. As you integrate this awareness, you realize something profound. Your anxiety was never a curse. It was the compass pointing you toward your true direction. It was the inner radar guiding you away from a life that was slowly draining your spirit. It was the signal that the story you were living in was too small for who you are becoming. And the moment you accept this, your relationship with discomfort transforms. You stop resisting it. You stop fearing it. You begin to treat it as information, as guidance, as the voice of the deeper self that refuses to be silenced. Awakening does not ask you to abandon the world. It asks you to see through it, to live in it without being ruled by it, to engage with it without forgetting that your true allegiance is to the unfolding of your consciousness. And as this understanding settles into your bones, you regain something that modern life stole from you, your sense of wonder. You begin to feel again the mystery that surrounds everything, the mystery of existence, the mystery of your own mind, the mystery of why you, out of billions of possible lives, are here at this precise moment, feeling exactly what you are feeling. There is no accident in your awakening, no coincidence in your sensitivity. You are not malfunctioning. You are remembering. And the memory that is returning to you is older than language, older than civilization, older than the world you were taught to obey. It is the memory of your true nature. And once this memory awakens, it cannot be forgotten again. So something extraordinary begins to happen the moment you stop trying to control the narrative. The narrative begins to reveal you. It starts peeling back layers you didn't even know were there, exposing patterns, exposing inherited fears, exposing illusions so ancient they feel like they were carved into your bones. And instead of running from them, instead of trying to fix them like some broken piece of machinery, you simply watch them quietly, honestly, with the kind of attention that transforms everything it touches. Because awareness is not passive. Awareness is an alchemist. It turns confusion into clarity, pressure into presence, chaos into a map. And once you notice this, once you see how simply seeing something changes it, you begin to understand that your greatest tool was never force. It was attention. And attention is dangerous. Because attention shows you what is real. It shows you that half the battles you fought were scripted by fear, not necessity. It shows you that so many of the wars you waged were inherited from people who were fighting ghosts of their own. It shows you that the voice you thought was your intuition was often just a frightened echo from childhood, trying to keep you small enough to survive in rooms where you were never allowed to grow. And when you finally see all this, the world stops being something happening to you and becomes something unfolding through you. This is the moment when people around you begin to sense a strange shift. Not loud, not dramatic, but unmistakable. They can feel that you're no longer operating from the same invisible contracts everyone else follows. You're no longer bargaining for approval. You're no longer twisting yourself into a shape that pleases the collective. You're no longer negotiating with your own soul. And instead of celebrating this awakening, many people become unsettled. Because the moment you stop participating in their illusions, you stop validating them. And nothing terrifies the unconscious more than losing its audience. So they try to pull you back. Not always intentionally, not even consciously. Humans cling to familiarity like it's oxygen. They try to remind you who you used to be. They try to lure you back into predictable conversations, familiar dramas, recycled emotional loops. And the irony is that you could step right back into those loops if you wanted to. The door is always open, but the moment you walk backward, even for a second, you feel the sharp sting of self-betrayal. You feel the weight of shrinking. You feel the ache of returning to a version of yourself who no longer exists. And so you don't go back. You keep moving, not with force, not with hustle, not with performance, but with inevitability. Because once consciousness expands, it doesn't return to smaller dimensions. It may contract temporarily, it may glitch, it may spiral, but it never truly regresses. Once your eyes have seen the architecture behind the illusion, you cannot pretend you're just a character in the play. You realize you're both the actor in the stage, the observer in the story, the awareness behind all of it. And this realization doesn't inflate your ego. It humbles it. It softens you. It invites you into a level of inner stillness that feels almost otherworldly. And in that stillness, you notice something beautiful. You're finally hearing your own intelligence, not the noise of the world, not the static of conditioning, not the voices that taught you to fear your own power, your own intelligence. Raw, unfiltered, ancient. It speaks in impulses, in intuitions, in subtle gravitational pulls that make no sense to the rational mind but feel truer than anything you've ever been told. It pulls you toward people you don't fully understand, away from situations you tolerated for too long, into moments of transformation that seem reckless to anyone who hasn't tasted their own awakening. And when you follow this intelligence, your life begins to reorganize itself with a kind of elegance that feels almost supernatural. The right insights arrive at the right time. The right people appear without effort. The wrong people fall away without drama. Opportunities emerge that you couldn't have strategized, even with perfect planning. And yet, despite all this magic, a strange tension remains. Because awakening doesn't eliminate your humanity. Your insecurities don't vanish. They just lose their authority. Your fears don't disappear. They just stop steering the ship. Your doubts still whisper, sometimes loudly, sometimes violently. But they can no longer convince you that they are truth. You see them as weather. Passing, temporary, impermanent. And because of that, you stop worshiping them. You stop shaping your life around them. You stop giving them the final vote. This is the beginning of real freedom, when fear becomes just another sensation, not a dictator. And when you reach this level of freedom, something remarkable occurs. You begin to feel life again, not as a concept, not as a checklist, not as an obligation, but as a pulse, a texture, a living presence moving through you. You taste your own existence with a clarity that feels almost psychedelic. The colors seem sharper. Time feels fluid. Every moment becomes a doorway. Every breath becomes a revelation. You start feeling the subtle intelligence inside ordinary things, the way a stranger's eyes carry a lifetime of unspoken stories, the way silence can hold more truth than language, the way your own heartbeat contains a map of every decision you've ever made. And slowly you start realizing this was never about fixing yourself. It was about remembering yourself, the self beneath tension, the self beneath performance, the self beneath expectation, a self so wild, so luminous, so untamed that the world tried to train it out of you before you even learned your own name. And when that self returns, even in fragments, your entire existence recalibrates. You stop choosing what's safe and start choosing what's real. You stop asking for permission and start following your internal compass. You stop trying to be understood and start trying to be authentic, because you finally recognize that understanding is a consequence, not a requirement. And as this authenticity grows, you begin to feel something powerful, an inner authority that cannot be borrowed, faked, or taught. It's the authority of someone who knows where they've walked, someone who has met their shadows and survived, someone who has watched their identity dissolve and reform, someone who has touched silence and discovered it was never empty. When you speak from that place, people feel it. Not because of your words, but because of the resonance behind them. They feel the truth vibrating in your presence, the steadiness in your gaze, the groundedness in your energy. This is the moment your life stops being a reaction and becomes a transmission. Your existence begins to influence the world in ways you can't measure, not through force, not through effort, but through frequency. You become a tuning fork for clarity, a disruptor of unconsciousness, a reminder that awakening is contagious. People may not understand what changed, but they feel it. They feel safer around you, or more threatened, or more inspired, or more uncomfortable. Because your presence pulls truth out of people, whether they are ready for it or not. And this influence isn't something you control. It's something you embody. You don't choose it. It chooses you. Because the world doesn't need more successful people. It needs more awakened people, more clear people, more people who have stopped lying to themselves, more people who have stepped out of the script and into themselves, And the deeper you go into this state, the quieter your life becomes. Not empty, quiet. Quiet in the way galaxies are quiet. Quiet in the way oceans are quiet beneath the waves. Quiet in the way truth is quiet until someone is finally still enough to hear it. And it is in this quietness that you discover the final, most radical truth. You are not navigating life. You are life navigating itself. You are not chasing purpose. You are purpose unfolding. You are not seeking clarity. You are clarity remembering its own nature. And when this recognition finally settles, everything that once felt urgent begins to disappear. The noise dissolves, the pressure dissolves, the fear dissolves, and what remains is spacious, timeless, and profoundly alive. A kind of existence that doesn't need permission, doesn't need validation, doesn't need to make sense to anyone else, because it is grounded not in belief, but in direct experience. And once you begin to live from that place of direct experience, life stops feeling like a puzzle to solve and begins to feel like a revelation unfolding. Every moment becomes both the question and the answer. Every challenge becomes both the storm and the clearing. Every step becomes both the risk and the reward. And you start to realize something extraordinary. You were never meant to figure it all out. You were meant to feel it, to participate in the mystery, not conquer it, to dance with the unknown, not dominate it. And with that realization, an immense weight falls from your shoulders. The weight of certainty, the weight of perfection, the weight of trying to control destiny like a stubborn child tugging on the hem of the universe. Instead, you start moving with the same intelligence that pulls the tides and spins the galaxies, an intelligence that requires no permission and makes no apologies. The intelligence of change, the intelligence of becoming. And as you align with that flow, life stops resisting you. Not because it becomes easier, but because you stop fighting its natural rhythm. You stop mistaking transformation for loss. You stop confusing endings with failures. You stop interpreting uncertainty as danger. Instead, you begin to experience uncertainty as the threshold of discovery, the invitation to evolve, the doorway into dimensions of yourself you could never reach while clinging to the familiar. And in this space, you realize how long you allowed yourself to live in a cage that never had a lock. How many years you spent negotiating with your own potential, asking permission to grow from people who were terrified of growth themselves. How many times you dimmed your light to make others comfortable, even though you were born from the same stars that illuminate entire galaxies without asking if it's convenient for anyone. And once you see this clearly, you no longer feel guilty for expanding. You feel responsible, not because the world demands it, but because your soul does. The strange thing is, as you come alive, many people won't know how to handle you. Your clarity will expose their confusion. Your peace will disturb their chaos. Your self-trust will highlight their self-doubt. And instead of meeting you at this new vibrational height, some will try to drag you back down to the version of you that made sense to them. They will say you've changed as if that were an insult. They will accuse you of becoming distant, unaware that distance is sometimes a symptom of elevation. They will claim you've become too much, never realizing that you were simply becoming yourself. And when this happens, you will face a profound choice: shrink so they feel safe, or rise so you feel free. And in this new stage of your awakening, you finally choose freedom, quietly, unapologetically, and without ceremony, because you've learned the hardest truth of all. You cannot carry everyone with you. You cannot drag the unconscious into awakening. You cannot save people who are committed to their own limitations. Awareness is not an argument, it is a frequency. And if someone is not ready to rise to that frequency, no amount of explanation will bring them there. So you let them go, not with bitterness, not with resentment, but with a sacred kind of compassion. The compassion that understands every soul moves at its own pace. The compassion that doesn't interfere with someone else's curriculum. The compassion that accepts that love in its highest form sometimes means release. And in letting go, you reclaim something extraordinary, your own energy. Energy you poured into dead conversations, energy you wasted trying to be understood by people committed to misunderstanding you. Energy you sacrificed to maintain connections that were draining the very life from your bones. This reclaimed energy becomes your new fuel. It fills your mind with clarity. It fills your heart with courage. It fills your path with momentum. And suddenly, you begin to grow at a rate that almost startles you. Insights come faster. Healing accelerates. Intuition sharpens. Creativity ignites. You begin to operate not from fear, not from scarcity, but from an inner abundance that has been waiting beneath your wounds, beneath your doubts, beneath the illusion that you were small. And as this abundance expresses itself, life begins responding in unprecedented ways. Synchronicities multiply, opportunities appear. Doors that once seemed sealed shut begin to open with almost eerie ease. You realize that life was never withholding anything from you. It was waiting for you to stop withholding yourself. And it is here, in this sacred intersection of awareness and surrender, that you begin to witness the real miracle. Your entire existence rearranging itself around your authenticity. The things that once felt impossible become natural. The dreams that once felt distant come closer. The people who resonate with your spirit gravitate toward you like planets pulled into orbit. And you understand, maybe for the first time, that alignment was never about effort. It was about becoming the version of yourself that your destiny could recognize. Yet even in this state of expansion, one last challenge emerges, perhaps the greatest of them all, staying true to yourself once the world begins to react. Because the moment you step into alignment, the universe responds. Opportunities come. Attention comes. Responsibility comes. Visibility comes. And with these gifts comes the temptation to perform again, to play roles again, to carry expectations again, to become the polished, presentable version of yourself that society rewards. But this time, you know better. You've tasted what it means to live without masks. You've felt the peace that comes from truth. You've experienced the power of authenticity, and you refuse to betray yourself again. So you walk forward unmasked, unfiltered, unedited, even if it feels vulnerable, even if it feels risky, even if the world doesn't fully understand you yet, because you understand yourself now. And that is enough. That is more than enough. That is everything. And as this self-understanding deepens, you reach a final realization, one that many spend their entire lives searching for. Awakening was never about becoming extraordinary. It was about remembering the extraordinary depth that was always there. The depth beneath the fear, the depth beneath the conditioning, the depth beneath the persona you were taught to wear. You realize that the universe has been speaking through your curiosity, through your longings, through your heartbreaks, through your intuition, through your obsessions, through every strange impulse that didn't make sense at the time but now reveals itself as guidance. You see that your life was never random, your suffering was never pointless, your longing was never a curse. Every detour, every shadow, every loss, every silence, every unexpected turn, it was all sculpting you, preparing you, initiating you, not into the life you wanted, but into the life you were meant for. A life rooted in awareness, a life guided by truth, a life aligned with your deepest intelligence. And when you finally recognize this, gratitude floods your being, not the polite gratitude taught in books, but a raw, overwhelming gratitude that expands your chest and blurs your vision. A gratitude that makes you realize you didn't just survive your journey, you were transformed by it. And this is where your conclusion emerges, not as an ending, but as an awakening within the awakening. You realize that the real purpose of this entire evolution was never success, never validation, never mastery. It was presence. It was consciousness. It was becoming someone who is no longer hypnotized by fear, no longer manipulated by doubt, no longer shackled by the expectations of the unconscious world. It was becoming someone who can stand in the center of chaos and still hear the whisper of truth. Someone who can walk through the unknown with steady feet. Someone who has learned to trust the intelligence that moves through all things. And now standing here, beyond the layers, beyond the illusions, beyond the versions of yourself that once felt permanent, you finally understand awakening is not an escape from life. It is the way you fully enter it. It is the moment you stop running, stop forcing, stop fighting, and begin listening. Listening to yourself, listening to the universe, listening to the silent, ancient wisdom pulsing beneath your thoughts, your breath, your existence. And as you listen, the truth becomes unmistakable. You are not someone becoming awake. You are awareness remembering itself. You are the universe noticing its own reflection. And your life, your entire life, has been the path home to this moment. This is the power of letting go. This is the power of awakening. This is the power of becoming who you were always meant to be.